Well, we're speaking to Pat the Cope Gallagher, MEP for Ireland North West. Pat the Cope, I suppose I would start by putting a question to you. I mean, given the fact that you're starting a new term as MEP for the North West constituency, perhaps you might outline the kind of interests you think you're going to be serving for your constituents over the course of your term.
Well, of course, while this is a new term for me, I was elected twice previously to the European Parliament, and I served in the Fisheries Committee at that time because of the nature of my constituency, and I opted again for fisheries. I feel I have a moral duty to do that. And of course, at this time, there's a review of the Common Fisheries Policy. We have an opportunity before the end of the year to submit our observations. We're doing that at the moment, both in the context of the Fisheries Committee, and I will be doing one together with my colleagues as well. So a priority for me is the review of the Common Fisheries Policy. And I've always taken the view that the Common Fisheries Policy wasn't balanced as far as Ireland is concerned. We have some of the most prolific fishing grounds off our coast, but the corollary of that is we have less fish than many other countries who don't have that. In addition to that, of course, coming from a border county, I want to protect the funds that are there for peace and reconciliation. That fund, together with the International Fund for Ireland, played a very important role in the peace process. And of course, the Interreg funds are also important. I want to protect all of those, and I want to work with my colleagues in relation to the financial perspectives of the Common Agricultural Policy. We're told that this could be a contracting budget. Many are not aware of the importance of the Common Agricultural Policy. The funding is not just going into agriculture. The more that goes into agriculture, the more benefit in the country from this.
Mm-hmm. And just having mentioned the reform process that's ongoing with the Common Fisheries Policy, do you think there's a danger that we could be sort of raising expectations for Irish fishermen as much as other community fishermen when it comes to so-called saving the industry, when there are real confines and limitations on what we can do? Obviously, there have been two quite unsuccessful reform processes with the CFP in previously. Do you think there's a risk that we might raise expectations in the sector?
Of course, the Irish industry, both the producers and the processors, are pragmatic. They're very realistic. They know, as do I, what happened in the reviews in the past. So therefore, we're not raising the expectations too high. But we're saying to the Commission and to all of the stakeholders, we want a balanced outcome to all of this. And I even suggested today that there should be some form of positive discrimination for countries like our own that have their prolific grounds, but we don't have a corresponding or even close to a corresponding percentage of the fish. But Joe Borg, I take comfort in what Commissioner Borg, from whom I have the greatest regard and unfortunately has not been reappointed, he did say that everything was on the table. So I do believe that everything is on the table. Now possibly is the greatest opportunity we have to try and rebalance the situation. I spoke to him today about the Hague preferences, which goes back to 1976. And while each year, and I served on the Council of Fisheries Ministers, each year we're negotiating that. I would suggest that from here on in, that the Hague preference, or maybe in some other guise, should be written in stone into the new Common Fisheries Policy.
Okay, very good. And I suppose I would turn now just to the fact that obviously today is the first day of the coming into force of the Treaty of Lisbon. And given the two referendum campaigns we've had in Ireland, it was made apparent that there is a strong lack of, I suppose, understanding and perhaps communication with European citizens and, from our point of view, Irish citizens in particular, about what happens at an EU level. Are there any practical steps that you think ought to be brought about how the EU and its institutions can better communicate with its citizens?
Of course, we have a system here whereby we can invite our people to visit the European institution, familiarise themselves with the workings. And any of those people who visit the Parliament go back with knowledge of the workings of Parliament. But of course the number of people who can come is very small in comparison with the number of people who are interested. So I do believe that the media, both local and national, could play a more important role. So also could the Commission, because the language that's used here, the European jargon, it turns people off. So we have to simplify that. And I think in this age of information technology and websites, I think people are becoming more interested. And there's a programme each week based by RTE, based on the Parliament. I think that whets the appetite for people to take a greater interest. And we ourselves, of course, as MEPs, we try to communicate Europe as best we can, but it's quite difficult to do. But I think the second Lisbon Treaty was very helpful in that it focused attention on Europe more than any other treaty in the past, despite the fact that it didn't have the economic, or it wasn't seen to have the economic benefits of others.
I mean, it's definitely true to say, I suppose, that given the fact we've had the debate twice over, Irish citizens seem to have an advantage over their fellow citizens around the Union when it comes to awareness. But is there perhaps a tendency for some member state governments, including our own, to take credit for Europe's successes and to point the finger of blame for Europe's failures?
Well, of course, we have played a very central role in the European project and in the development of Europe over years. I think the Irish people spoke for the rest of Europe. We're the only country who had an opportunity by way of referendum, and perhaps other countries should in the future consider plebiscites to allow their people to decide. We've played an important role. We've spoken for Europe, and I don't want to reflect in any way on the majority who voted against the Lisbon Treaty last year. I think all of us, politicians, government, opposition parties, are all to blame because we took the outcome for granted. But I'm a supporter of the European project, and I do believe that our place is within Europe. A small island with 4 million people, with 2 sea crossings to the European Union, we couldn't survive. And particularly at this time of a recession, financial crisis at home, the European Central Bank are playing an important role. And we would possibly be in the same position as Iceland are at the moment had we been outside the Eurozone.
And then I suppose just turning then to the role of an Irish parliamentarian in particular in the European Parliament, do you think there's any conflict in terms of the constituency concerns which an Irish MEP is expected to meet, which can vary from the tiny and mundane to the rather important and significant, and then those responsibilities that an Irish parliamentarian has to cater and meet here in Brussels or alternatively in Strasbourg? Often you're dealing with the micro at home and the macro here in amongst with the EU institutions. Do you think that's a conflict that is difficult to negotiate? And would you like to elaborate on that?
Well, it's only a conflict in terms of time and in terms of pressure. For me, it's absolutely essential. I served here for 8 years in the past, and it was important for me to concentrate on the European issues, but also concentrate on the micro aspects of this back at home. The Irish parliamentarian is in a much different position to many of the other parliamentarians because we're voted directly by the people within our own constituencies, and it's not a question of a list system and that you're voted and your success is based on the popularity of the government at any one time. It's a mixture of both, and I do believe that had I ignored the micro aspects of it or the demands of my constituents, I certainly wouldn't have been re-elected.
Sure. Well, Pat the Cope, thank you very much for giving your time and for contributing to the Politics Talk project. I wish you the best for the remainder of your term.
Very well.
Thanks very much.